Hello, everyone. My name is Annalee Kruger. I'm the owner of Care Right Incorporated. You are listening to the Caregiver Crisis podcast today. Thank you so much for everyone who listens to the podcast, likes and shares the information with friends and family and colleagues that need to learn more about aging and family caregiving and dementia progression and senior care options and all those things that we talk about all the time at Care Right and all these different podcasts. As you know, I take great pride in curating really high quality folks to interview on the podcast, and today is no different. Today we have Kelly Augspurger, and I would love to introduce Kelly to all of you. You have such a beautiful bio. Kelly is the co-founder and co-owner of Steadfast Insurance, LLC. They're an independent insurance agency in Westerville, Ohio. Kelly is a long-term care insurance specialist and certified senior advisor working nationwide to help clients and financial planners plan for extended care. Her goal is to help clients create a plan for care to live well and reduce the physical, mental, emotional, and financial consequences of any long-term care situation. She's able to do this by having planning for care conversations and through the long-term care insurance policy itself. Kelly is passionate about planning for care because life is unexpected, and she's personally experienced multiple situations in her own family where loved ones needed care and no one had a plan or insurance. She loves helping families and businesses put meaningful protection in place to protect the people and possessions most important to them. In 2024, Kelly was named Innovate Her Icon Women in Business Leader of 2024 by Humans of Globe magazine. In 2025, Kelly was named Top 10 Most Influential Business Icons to Watch. She's an instructor for the CLTC training program, where she teaches advisors how to talk to their clients about long-term care. Kelly is a creator and host of Steadfast Care Planning podcast. She's also on the board of the Central Ohio Care Planning Council and FPA of Central Ohio. So welcome, Kelly. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Annalee. Thank you so much for having me. Woo, I'm tired after hearing all of that. I think the short and sweet of it is, I'm here to talk about planning for extended care. So I think, the foundation here, I think a lot of people don't necessarily even know what extended care is. I think some people might have misconceptions of what it is. So let's just quickly define what that is in our world. When we're talking about long-term care, a lot of times people think nursing home, right? That tends to be one of the first things people think of, but I want people to really expand their minds. And what I use extended care because I think it's more comprehensive. What essentially we're talking about, Annalee, is if you need assistance throughout the day. And generally, that happens as we age, just due to longevity. And that assistance could look like I need help with activities of daily living, some physical assistance, transferring, toileting, bathing, dressing, eating, or continence, or supervision because of a cognitive impairment like dementia or Alzheimer's. So, this is not, we're flat on our back in a hospital bed, unable to do anything. It could just start by needing standby assistance, and then it can progress from there. So, it really is, it's much more common than I think a lot of people think.
Oh, for sure. And I think that in my experience doing basically crisis planning, after the kids get overwhelmed or burned out and they're like, oh, we love our parents, but their needs are so much greater than what we have capacity for, time-wise, emotionally, physical skill set. Yesterday, I was talking to a son who's like, I'm acting like a nurse. I'm doing my mom's wound care and I'm taking her to the bathroom and like, none of this is comfortable for me, And so this is really the predicament, if you will, that pretty much every family is going to encounter if they have aging parents. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right.
And that's when families get, caregivers get thrust into caregiving. They're not prepared for it. And then they're scared and they're overwhelmed. And it's one thing, if mom has a broken hip and you're like, okay, yeah, I can probably suck this up for 6 or 8 weeks while she's getting therapy and stronger and back to baseline. But when you're talking about someone who's got a dementing illness and it's a 25, 30-year disease progression,
Hmm.
that's another entirely different ball game, and not everybody wants to be a caregiver. Maybe they don't even
Right.
like their parents, and now
Right.
they're like, "They weren't a good parent to me, and now I have to take care of them." Like, that doesn't make sense, right?
Right. Or
So
maybe they can't be a caregiver, right? Maybe they don't
Mm.
live in the same city or town or have the
Yep,
time or the flexibility to do it, which happens very often. So, I
yep,
mean, you just highlighted this is why planning ahead is so important. And this
yep.
is why every family needs a plan for extended care, especially, if you're 50 plus, you need to start thinking about these things for yourself. Don't wait until you're 70, 80, 90 years old.
Mhm.
Start talking about this now with your family. Don't do it at holidays. Do it sometimes separate, in a very casual, comfortable environment. It's not supposed to be confrontational. It's supposed to be very conversational and just expressing your preferences. What you would like, home care. If you've thought about assisted living, do you want the family involved at all in the care? But I think those are really creating the building blocks and the foundation, Annalee, is really important in the planning ahead. And so I think let's just briefly talk about that. What
Yeah,
what do people even need to consider in having a care plan? Very, very basically, and I know you go into great
yeah.
detail in care plans, but just starting with the basics, the first is who. Who might those potential caregivers be? Are those professionals? Is it family? Is it a combination? Have you talked to them about that? Have you talked to your family about if they might want to be involved in care, if they can be involved? Would they be better care managers versus caregivers? That's usually what happens, right? Family often steps in as
Yep,
care managers.
yep.
But, the who, identifying the who is really important. And then the second piece is where.
Mhm.
Ideally, where will they be and where do they want to be? I live in Ohio. Am I going to stay in Ohio throughout retirement? I don't know.
Right.
Maybe my husband and I will be snowbirds, but at this point in my life, I don't know the answer to that, but I could probably pinpoint a couple of places. So even identifying what state, what city, but then also more refined, do I want to be at home? Can I stay at home? Is my home safe? Do I have a first floor bathroom, bedroom, or, would I have to put in, on my staircase, a chair to go up and down? These are just things to start thinking about. Are my doors wide enough?
Mhm.
Because if I end up needing a wheelchair, can I get through my doors? So the where is really important. And then the third, how am I going to pay for this?
Yep.
Because most often, yes, we might use some family to help with some care, but you might likely need some professional caregivers. So, how are you going to pay them? Is that
Mhm.
going to be completely out of pocket? Are you going to use insurance, long term care insurance? Are you going to use a combination? Are you a veteran? Are there VA benefits? Will you have to rely on Medicaid because you've run out of resources? That's what we want to avoid. Right? We
Right.
want to avoid Medicaid. And so, talking through those things and planning ahead, that's another reason because the more pre-planning you do, the better options you're going to have and probably the longer your money will last.
But here is where I need to step in because that is all fine and dandy, and you know this just as much as I do. This is why it's like a really exciting podcast because we do some similar things. There's a little bit of
Mhm.
overlap, but I don't sell insurance at all. I like to just stay in my lane,
Mhm.
and so, but that's why I interviewed you because I'm like, yay, you do the insurance piece, and so it's easy for people to say, like, when I ask mom and dad, because my client's the whole family, right? So I have
Yeah.
everybody on Zoom because I'm a virtual family caregiver, senior care consultant for
Yeah.
families literally all across the globe. And so every time I ask mom and dad, what are your goals as you age? It has been the same thing for 35 years. I want to age in place at home and I don't want to be a burden to my kids.
Right.
But guess who's calling Care Right for a Care Right aging plan? Because they're like, Anna Lee, I love mom and dad. I'm so burned out. My husband is like, look, you better figure out what to do with your parents because you're not
Yeah.
even present for our marriage anymore. You keep missing our own kids' stuff because you have to keep flying back and forth every time dad falls and you have to take care of your mom. And so when I ask the adult kids, what are your goals for your parents as they age? It is always the same. Safety first. I
Mhm.
want them to be safe, happy, have the best quality of life, and the best quality of care possible. So the only way to marry those goals so that everybody wins is that we start these conversations now,
Yeah.
preferably proactively, versus in crisis mode when everybody's in a high emotional state, and then you get whatever care options are available. But when we talk about parents wanting to age in place at home, it sounds good on the surface, but what I can promise you they do not know is they think Medicare is gonna pay for everything,
Right.
or they don't realize that to age in place at home with 24/7 care, where you need literally someone with
Mhm.
you all day long and all night to help you with all of your activities of daily, bathing, dressing, grooming, if you're bedbound, because we don't get healthier as we age. So when people say they wanna age in place at home, they're not fast forwarding to how sick they are in the end of life process, right?
Right.
And so my clients that are aging in place at home, for one caregiver, this is why I do so much public education about all of this and aging planning, they don't realize how expensive care is. My clients who are aging in place at home with just one caregiver are paying anywhere from, depending on where they live, because I'm nationwide, 30,000, 25 to $30,000 per month for one companion. And if they need two people because they're obese or they have severe dementia and they need two caregivers with them at all time because of behavior and wandering, I have clients that are paying 60, 70, and $80,000 a month just in companion care. That's not a nurse. That's just
Yeah.
someone to sit there with you and play bingo and Uno and make sure you get to the bathroom. And so when you need a nurse to set up meds and coordinate doctor's appointments and coordinate care, that's another 3 to 5,000 per month, depending on the volume of doctor's appointments and medications and all that kind of stuff. So it's an expensive journey to
It's
age in place
exorbitant,
at home.
right?
And
Yeah.
so when families realize that after I've educated them on this, they're like, "Oh my gosh, we only have
Mhm.
$1 million. How are we? There's no way we can age in place at home." And so, that's why all this proactive, preferably proactive planning ahead and learning this information so that you're making informed decisions now versus in reaction mode. Because if you only have so much money to work with,
Right.
what is going to be your aging in place at home care budget so that you don't break the bank and now you can't financially qualify to get into a better quality care community because you have to financially qualify and some of them have
Right.
a 3 to 5 year waiting list. So what are you going to do in that interim if you don't have the money to be able to stay at home? So that's where we talk about the long-term care policy and the benefits of that.
That's right. Just providing that buffer and that foundation, having long-term care insurance be your first payer, but knowing that it's likely not going to cover all of your
Oh,
care
yeah, it
expenses.
won't.
And that's okay. It doesn't have to, right? But it really is meant to be a buffer to protect your income first, because this is actually a cash flow issue. Yes,
Uh-huh.
we will likely have to dip into assets, but first it's a cash flow issue. And family, of course. We know it's a family issue. But when we're
Yes.
talking about financial, it's income and then it's assets and legacy. And so if we want to protect that, having insurance as the leverage, right? Being able to put in a dollar, you get a multiple of dollars back from the insurance company. There's just a lot of value there that gives us
Mhm.
predictability, peace of mind, and protection. And at the end of the day, I think that's what most of us want, heading into retirement or as we age. How do we get those things? Well, you
Mhm.
you need to proactively plan ahead. It's a must.
And you need to know the landscape of senior care options in your area. Like that's what we
Right.
help families understand is like, well, if you live in northern Wisconsin where there's not home care much available and you want to age in place at home, but there's no care there, that's going to form your decision on, okay, can I really stay there? If you don't want to rely on your kids, my typical son or daughter is spending $15,000 the year prior before working with us just in emergency airfare.
I
Because
believe
when you
that.
get that crisis call, it's not $69 on Frontier, it's like 1,000, 1,200 bucks at a pop, and
Yeah.
that's just airfare, that's and that's not sustainable. These people are working, they might be sandwich generations, they might have their own issues at home or a special
Yeah.
needs child, so it's not like, and that's where we end up with resentment and like, "Look, I
Mhm.
love my mom and dad, but I can't keep doing this. It's affecting and derailing my whole life." And so we need to know the landscape of senior care. We also need to look at, even though nobody wants to go into a care community, the reality is all the people that live in the care communities, they also wanted to age in place at home. But life has its own agenda, and maybe they realized, "Oh, I can't afford 24/7 care," or
Right.
they live in an area where there is limited care, and so they need to move into a care community, or they're too isolated, lonely, and depressed at home because 'cause they're by themselves. They get into a care community, they perk up. They're getting 3 meals a day, their medications, care oversight, and people to eat with.
Yeah, those are the exact reasons that I see people move into communities or
Mhm.
facilities
Yep.
too, Annalie. Exactly. Like care is too expensive at home if you're receiving round the clock care and or isolation and depression. So, a care community can be actually very wonderful,
Uh-huh.
depending on the situation. So you might say, "Hey, I want to age in place at home," but you know what? The care continuum, that it could change and that's okay. But having these conversations with your family up front are going to be so beneficial in the long run.
And I think there's merit in saying this too, because some of the listeners are going to be the adult kids, and they're like, "Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds great. I've tried to have these conversations with my mom and dad, but they gave us pushback. So here are some tips, because this is
Yeah.
what I do." And so the kids are like, "Annalee, I love everything that you have to say. We've been trying to have these conversations. We're just trying to even find out if we're the power of attorney, right? And that's a whole nother planning
Oh,
ahead
yeah.
thing. So that's why we do the grab and go binder. And so if you're in the boat of being like the adult kid who's kind of thrust into caregiving, you can say, "Look, mom and dad, leverage this podcast. I was listening to this podcast. Send them the link if you want to. Listen to this podcast. It really made me realize we haven't really had any conversations about the what whens, not the what
Mhm.
ifs, but the what whens of aging. And it really got me to thinking that, what are your goals? What are your wishes? How realistic are they given your finances?"
Yeah.
And, if your house is your only asset and Social Security, you're not gonna be able to age in place at home. So we need to have some frank, probably what other people view as uncomfortable conversations. Is it important for you to have a say in what happens to you as you age? Ask your parents that. Is it important for you to be as self-reliant and independent as possible without having to call me every time there's a problem? Yes. And so those are some question prompts, or say, you know what, mom, we're in this journey and we're in uncharted territory. I love you, but what we're doing right now with this back and forth all the time, it's not sustainable and it's not safe. I'm
Yeah.
worried. Let's have
Yeah.
some conversations. And also know that very, 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 very few families can actually have these conversations on their own. That's why, we do family meetings and family mediation, because if
Mhm.
you don't understand dementia progression and what that's going to entail, and if you don't understand the difference between assisted living and skilled nursing, you can't expect a consumer, to make an informed decision when they're just making more like emotional decisions instead of
Agree.
intellectual decisions. So if you're
Yeah.
listening to this and you're the adult kids, those are a couple pointers on how you can broach these topics. We are in uncharted territory. I love you, but what we're doing isn't safe or sustainable. Is it important for you to have as much say as possible as you age on the kind of care and where you get the care? If you're the senior, because on the flip side, a lot of adult parent or aging parents have said, they're calling me and they're like, "Annalee, I am trying to get my kids to sit down and like listen to me because I'm worried about, my end of life and I don't want to be a
Yeah.
burden to them, but I can't get them to like, Mom, we don't want to talk about that because that's going to trigger you to have a stroke or whatever." Because some, and so if you're, but that's what people
Yeah.
think. And so if you're the Ethels and the Marvins of the group listening to the cohort, say, again, same thing. Leverage this podcast and say, I want to have some conversation about these what whens of aging. I don't know how to do that on my own with you and with you kids. So we'd like to work with a professional who does this so that we can make informed decisions now for current and future care needs down the road and how it's going to get paid. Because now that you've listened to this podcast, you know how expensive care is. And that's just
Right.
what we've talked about is aging in place at home, those care costs. We haven't talked about, entrance fees into continuing care communities that are hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars up front. And then you still
Mhm.
have your room and board costs and your level of care costs. So again, that long-term care policy can be really a savior, if you will, of some of your assets, because the more that you don't have to pay out monthly for cash flow, the better it's going to be.
That's right, and the longer that it will last. And if
That's
your
right.
intention is to have some type of a financial legacy for your family, if you need care, that's a big way that that financial legacy is going to be depleted. Let's just briefly, Annalee, talk about the different types of long-term care insurance. I know we don't have a ton of time, so we'll just kind of go through these pretty quickly, but we do have quite a few different options today, really more so than ever before. We have fewer carriers, fewer insurance companies that are in the market than there were like 20 years ago, but we have great options. The first is just traditional standalone LTC coverage. This is like your home, auto, health insurance. It pays benefits if you need care. If you don't need care, there's no residual value. Okay, this is going to be typically the least expensive, most cost-effective way to buy coverage. And but the caveat to that is it's usually one of the hardest to health qualify for. So, we want to, with all long-term care insurance, the younger and the healthier we are, the more options we'll have and the less expensive it will be. Okay, so that's traditional. The second is hybrid, where we have a combination. So we have a combination between LTC coverage, but then if you don't need long-term care, then there is residual value. And that can come in the form of cash value from an annuity or a death benefit from life insurance. Okay, so I don't need care, something goes to my beneficiaries. The third type we have is similar to that hybrid, the difference being it is only accelerating the death benefit. So it is a life insurance policy with an LTC rider, but there's no extra bucket of money beyond the death benefit. Okay, the second type that I talked about, the main hybrids, there are additional benefits beyond the death benefit. So you're getting even greater leverage. Okay. The people that I see tend to buy just life insurance with LTC riders tend to be younger. Maybe they're in their 30s or 40s, and their primary concern is life insurance at that point, not long-term care. Okay. Yep. And then finally, short-term care insurance. So this is similar to long-term care insurance, but it's on a limited basis, meaning it will pay for care for up to a year at home and up to a year in a facility. So sometimes people will do this to act as almost like their buffer in their elimination period, their waiting period in their LTC policy. So it can pay for care during that waiting period, or if they can't health qualify for other things, underwriting with short-term care is usually much more lenient than a traditional policy. So, something's better than nothing. And if we can get them some type of a coverage, that can be really meaningful. So those are the main types.
You broke that down like so simply, which is good because these are really complicated things to think about. So you did like a really great job. But the moral to the story is planning ahead now, because if you wait until you're sick or you get that cancer diagnosis or until you have that stroke, I can't stress enough, because people are coming to Care Right because they're in crisis mode. They're like, oh my gosh, dad had a stroke. He's a caregiver to mom with dementia. Now we have two parents that need two different types of care, and I have a special needs child, and my spouse is sick with Parkinson's disease, and everybody's got life in front of them, right? And so the key is that we start these conversations now, but also act on it, because once you get certain diagnoses and stuff, there's a window of opportunity to get this stuff done. And so I know it's easy to put it off and say, oh, well, we'll do that in 2026. Well, I'm too busy. It's holiday time that we're gearing up for. Let's do it in 2026. But I'm here to tell you that thousands and thousands of people missed that window. So I'm trying to not overwhelm listeners, but give you that push to take action now. Kelly, you're nationwide, so it doesn't matter where.
I am nationwide.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. I work nationwide. And I will say, just to that point about health being so important, most of my clients, Annalee, tend to be in their 50s when they purchase long-term care insurance. I'm in my early 40s. I have long-term care insurance.
Yep, I got mine when I was 40.
Yes. Do I expect? So I was 42. I just bought mine, not too long ago. Why did I do it so young? Because I'm healthy and I can afford premiums. And you know what? I actually did a limited pay, meaning I'm paying premiums for only 10 years. And then my policy's paid up and I'm done. So by the time I'm in my, I'm 50. My policy is paid up, but I have coverage for the rest of my life. And this is especially advantageous for business owners, Annalee. So if you are a business owner, you have greater tax deductibility options with premiums, and benefits are still tax-free. So, don't wait until you're retired. Don't wait until then, because you will likely have health issues that could prevent you from getting coverage.
For sure. for sure. And I have to say, I did it too. When I reached 40, because I do what I do for a living, it's like
Yeah.
people don't plan until they're forced into a crisis, and then they'll have options, but not great ones. And by the time they come to us because their family isn't getting along, that's why so much of my week is spent doing family mediation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And uh, so so this can unravel, life can unravel and snowball so fast and so out of control that your head is going to spin. So I know when I got my policy, that was like one less thing I had to worry about, right?
Right.
Like,
For
because
sure.
the stuff that keeps you up at night is your
Yeah.
health, your well-being. If you're a solo ager, who's going to take care of me? What am I
Yeah.
going to do? Who's going to notice if I fall? I could
Yeah.
be here on my house floor in the kitchen for 5 days before anybody even notices.
Right.
Or and that's provided they even notice. And so there's like solo ager concerns, there's family concerns. What if you're a blended family? All of these kind of issues um really are important to address and put solutions in place. Start the conversations now. Know that you don't have to do this by yourself. Kelly
Right.
can help you with the long-term care piece. I do the aging planning, crisis management, family meetings, help you figure out care options and your grab and go binder to make sure everything is up to date and documented and that communicated back to the kids or the people who need to know. But the time is now. Like,
Yes.
now is the time to do this.
Yes, that's right. And one more thing to add on top of that is estate plan. So I know you said
Yep.
grab and go binder, but if you have not recently updated your estate plan,
Yep.
living will, trust, updating, who those people are going to be, POAs, please do it. Especially if there have been
Beneficiaries.
life changes, right? If your kids
That's right.
were little when you
Mhm.
did it and now they're grown and they're out of the house, well, we probably need to make some changes. So talk to an attorney, get those updated and include that in your grab and go binder.
That's right. And you can actually get the grab and go right off of the Care Right Inc. website. It's this massive checklist that everyone over the age of 18 should have. So if you have a business, there's business succession plan. If you have a pet, the pet safety plan. If you end up having to go into the hospital, there's accounts, passwords, estate
Hmm.
documents, insurance, everything that anyone who needs to step in as a decision maker has it at their fingertips. But from an estate, like living will, power of attorney perspective, time and time again, I see families that don't even have them. And
Mm,
now dad's got dementia, and now we're looking at emergency guardianship or conservatorship. And that's, depending on where you live, could be $20,000, $30,000 for emergency legal work like that, when you could have just proactively worked with an attorney and got all of this documentation in place sooner rather than later. The second mistake I see people make is when your loved one has dementia and has progressed to the point where they're not decisional, but you didn't have like a second person listed
mm.
as a power of attorney, or they didn't update the documents, and then that's more legal issues there too. So really just buttoning everything up and make that a really strong priority for your family, and be responsible about that.
That's right. And at the end of the day, your family and your financial plan will be more secure,
That's right.
right? And definitely have more peace of mind.
That's
So
exactly right.
go plan and take some action.
That's right. Kelly, this was amazing. I knew this time would go really fast because
Yeah.
we just play off of each other really, really well. And I'm so glad that you were able to take some time out of your very busy day to be a guest on this podcast. What's the best way people can reach you?
Yeah, so you can find me online. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can look me up there, Kelly Augspurger with a P as in Paul, and I know you'll have my name in the show notes, Annalee.
Yeah.
You can connect with me there. Also, our website, steadfastagents.com. That's plural, steadfastagents.com. As far as, options available, we always start with health because health is so important.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to know what options are available, you'll click on the pre-screen form and you'll start answering health questions. We'll connect, if we need to, and I can get some follow-up information. But that is a great first step in determining what options might be available for you.
Excellent. Very, very good. All right. Take action, everybody.
That's it. Thanks, Annalee. Oh, and also my podcast, Steadfast Care Planning. You can find me on any podcast platform, Steadfast Care Planning.
Perfect. All right. Sounds
Okay.
good.
Thanks,
Very good.
Annalee.
You bet. Thank you.